In this video, you're going to learn all about Airtable, which is a super powerful piece of software with thousands of use cases. However, in this video, the use case will be to build a personal productivity setup based on the Getting Things Done method, or GTD for short. Airtable is essentially a rich database, which is perfect for a use case like this. And to provide some quote-unquote real-life examples, we're going to pretend to be Samantha the salesperson as we go through the setup. Before we get started, you can either replicate the setup you're about to see all by yourself in your Airtable account, or you can save time, get a head start by downloading it as a template from my website and duplicating it into your account and get started right away. For just $4.99, links in the description. Now let's get into the video. Welcome to Samantha's Airtable base. Samantha the sales rep's GTD setup is the name, and under appearance you can alter the color as well as add an icon for the base, and I don't think the $sign requires any explanation here. On the second row here you can add all kinds of tables. Now the very first table you want to create is one named inbox. If you don't have one yet, you can add one here. I'm just going to press edit on the existing one to show you that you can give the table a name as such. You can also add an emoji to the name. Other than that, there's very little setup work involved. When it comes to the columns, the first one you'll want to name item name. This is a text field. It's a single line text field to be exact. And it's where you can drop down any notes, ideas that come up, anything you want to quickly capture and move on. The second column is a checkbox, which I've named Mark Complete. We're going to see this multiple times over in this setup. This is for those instances that the 2-minute rule applies in GTD. In other words, if you can do it in 2 minutes, just do it right now, get it over with, no clarifying required. The URL field is obviously where an URL with any associated notes can live inside of. And the quote field is specifically reserved for the web clipper. To get the web clipper to work, there's two prerequisites. The first being that you install the extension from the extensions dashboard on the right here. Now, I've already installed it, but if you press add an extension, you can search for web clipper. Now, again, I've already added it, but you can press add. And from here, you can configure what the behavior is for any item you save with the web clipper. Now, what's really nice is that you can actually configure it to add a record to the inbox by default. So I've selected the inbox table, and this is what it will do. And here are the fields it's going to fill up. Now, item name is going to be the title of the web page. URL is going to be the link of the page. And quote is for any text you may select on a page. Now let's take a look at it in action. Again, you will need to install it on your Chrome web browser. Then you will see an icon named Save to Airtable. I'm just going to go ahead and press it. I'm going to select Add Record to Inbox as we configured. And as you can see, we have the name of the page as well as a link, but no quotes. But I'm just going to go ahead and add that for now. Record added. And if we go to the inbox here, we can see it already. But if we want to also add a specific quote, for example, this one right here, I can just select it. And then again, I press the web clipper. And now the selected text is included in the quote field, which I can add, record added. There we go. You can see that it's here. But you can also see it's not super easy to read, which is why I recommend also adding a gallery view to the inbox. And we'll see this come up in other tables as well. What this is going to do, it's going to represent the exact same data, but instead it's going to display it in a card format. And this, I think, shows the difference and the power of the quote field, because you can see here is the first item we saved through the web clipper. And here, if we click this, we have access to all kinds of information in a intuitive view, including the quotes that we selected. And of course, before we forget, we can also add items manually by just going to an empty row or adding one if there's no empty row available. Let's call this item clean desk for now. We don't need to do anything else. We're not clarifying just yet. We're just dumping it in the inbox. And on mobile, you also have the option to manually add an item, although the other options are quite limited. There's no mobile widget. There's no quick add button or anything. You will need to open the app first. All right, now let's take a more detailed look at how everything is set up by first creating more tables. So again, you can press the plus button here and add the following tables. tasks, projects, goals, agendas, and reference. Now you probably just got a quick glance of everything and you can notice that everything looks a bit different on the inside. Let's go through them one by one and take a look at how they're organized. The task table is probably the most important one. No surprise there. It's basically the ground level where the actual action takes place, where you can go to inform yourself on what needs to be done. You can see a lot of colors, you can see a lot of views, you can see a lot of different tables inside, a lot of filters. So let's go through it one by one. First being the various columns to add. The first is task name, which is a text column. The second is mark complete, which is the same as in the inbox. The third is associated with. I'm going to skip this just for now, but we'll get back to this in a moment. The fourth is action state, and here you'll want to create a couple of predefined values, which you can do by going to single select, calling it action state, and then adding next action, waiting for, and someday maybe. Next actions being actions we can perform right now. There's no barrier between them, such as another task or time that needs to pass. Waiting for is for things we're waiting on by someone else or another company or whatever needs to happen before we can move forward. And the third someday maybe is for items that we've postponed. They're not actionable for us right now, either because we've decided that they aren't or there's other factors, but they're basically put on the back burner, which is what the someday maybe list is for. Next up, you can add a context tag, which is a multiple select field. Here you can add all the context that you have in your life. Now for Samantha, focused on sales, that's going to be a lot of emailing, using the phone, using the customer relationship management system or CRM where all the data is stored. And I've also added an home tag for her. Lastly, we have two date fields being the start date as well as a deadline field. Now, these don't always have to be filled, but for tasks that have time in between them becoming available or deadlines that do need to be met, here's where you can add them with the date field and it will show up as such with an easy to use calendar. Now, what you'll also notice here is that there are all kinds of views on the left-hand side. You can create all kinds of views in Airtable, and these are essentially filters. Let's go to the first view, which is all tasks. I mean, we've been here already. And this one also actually has a filter active, which is that it's only going to show tasks that are open, tasks that haven't been marked complete yet. And this is the condition to make that happen. In this view, show tasks where mark complete is unchecked. So you can add a condition as such, and then you can select any of the columns you've created and select any of the values they may have for them to show or be hidden from view in here. But again, in this all tasks view, we're just going to have mark complete is open. However, you can also create something like a today view, which won't surprise you, will only contain tasks that have either their start date or their deadline set to today. Now, the deadline use case is pretty obvious here, but the start date I think is super handy as well, because you may have tasks already preloaded in your system that are not next actions just yet. But if you see one coming up in your system here by going to the today view, they have no next action state, but the start date is today. That means you can now add the next action tag and have everything organized neatly. And of course, you'll know which deadlines to meet. The next actions overview will have every task that has the next action state. Waiting for, same story, all the things you may be waiting for somebody else to do for you. And again, someday maybe is also filtered by having action state is someday maybe. Pretty straightforward. In the calendar view, you'll have a, obviously, calendar-based view of any tasks that have either their start date or due date known, and they will show up here as such. Now, in the projects table, you're going to store multi-step outcomes. In other words, things you want to achieve that require more than one task to get to. Basically, these are the equivalent of lists. Now, the first list is actually perhaps a bad example. However, it's one that you'll probably want to add regardless. It's the standalone items list. And it right now only has one task, but it's a list that you will probably keep on filling with all kinds of tasks that don't really belong to a multi-step outcome. So this is just kind of a permanent one that you're always going to keep. Desired outcome is the basically name for the list, which is the first column. Again, mark complete is available as a checkbox. Associated tasks is basically a link to another record, which you can then link to the tasks table. And you'll also want to select allow link to multiple records, meaning you can associate multiple tasks with a particular project, which is basically the point of a project, right? And here you can see how that works out. Let's say we have the produce new email sequence project for Samantha, which is something she'll want to do to convert more leads into customers. The associated tasks with this project are feedback on first outreach email, write follow-up email, write breakup email. But this view isn't super helpful because we don't know the action state or context of these tasks, which is not essential for this particular view because we have the task view for that. But still, what if we do want to know about that? For that, we can actually create a new view, and it's going to be the gallery view, similar to what we did with the inbox. And now you'll see the exact same data viewed in a much more organized way, in my opinion. And from here, we can go to this particular project and see in much more detail what are the associated tasks, but not only that, what are their contexts as well as action states. And that's all because inside of this particular column, we associated these tasks, which you can do by going to the cell, pressing plus, and then you can find an existing task here, which you've created in the tasks view, which I will open as such here. And again, we've done the same, but in reverse here in this field associated with projects. And now again, we can go here and immediately when we double click, we'll have all the other information regarding the project that this tasks may belong to by just clicking on it. So it's a two-way association. You have full info from this view, but also from this view. And again, the filter mark complete is open, is activated here. So that once a project is complete, we can just mark it complete as such, close deal with Leo the lawyer, ask tasks, call Leo about quote, and wait on signature on contract. Let's assume that we've done these tasks. We can mark them complete. They're immediately removed from view here because we have this filter here. And here we can check up on our project, pressing expand. We'll see that these are complete. There's no other tasks, so we can mark the project complete as well. There we go. It's filtered away from view. If a project requires some support material, there's a couple of columns added for that as well. Support, which is a text field for some quick notes, URLs, links you may want to add, as well as files, which you can drop straight into the project from here, although you will probably prefer doing so from the gallery view, which is a lot more intuitive, as it has the text field associated here. You can also see an associated goal, which we set up from the goals view, of course, URL and files that can be dropped straight from this intuitive menu. Now, if we want to go one level higher, we can go to the goals table here, which is where we'll want to store any SMART goals. For example, selling 100% to quota with the deadline being end of the year. What I've done here is create a column named goal to achieve, which is text, an associated projects column, which is again linked to projects, and it can pull up any project that you have in that table by pressing plus, and I've already added this one here as a deadline and the time associated with that deadline as well. Next up, agendas, meaning what if something is a talking point with someone or for a particular meeting. Here, you add a column named talking point, which is text, a column which is a single select field, and inside of the options, you add people or meetings that you may be involved with. For Samantha, she is involved with her colleague, Simon, the SDR, and Mike, the manager, with whom she has separate talking points. Simon, she wants to ask him how's prospecting going, and she wants to give him feedback on his first outreach email once she sees him. Mike, she wants to know from Mike what's her quota for next month. He's her manager, so he can tell her. Now, this is still relatively easy to see, but you're probably going to have many, many more of these. So how do you add some structure there? Well, again, we can create separate views with filters. And in this case, you're going to want to filter by contact for any saved view, for example, for Simon the SDR. And it will ignore any talking points that aren't associated with him. That way, whenever you see him, you can super easily pull up a list of things you want to discuss. And once you've discussed them, you can mark them complete. And if you so wish, you can also add a condition here, again, involved with the check mark being open and not closed, so that you only see things you still want to discuss with him. And lastly, for reference, there's another table with a name, contents for more elaborate information like extra notes, tags to associate a topic with a note, attachments in case they're required, and a source in case there's, for example, an article you've saved that you just want to save as reference in case you need it. And in Samantha's case, she found an article on the HubSpot sales blog. I'm going to go to gallery view here as well, which says 20 less annoying synonyms and alternatives to please find attached, which is something she needs to tell her customers a lot. So she copied over the main alternatives to this phrase inside of the contents field. She associated the writing tag with it because it has to do with writing emails. And in case she wants to read the full article, she has the source URL right here, which she can click with these to end up at this blog article from HubSpot with a lot more details. And this is also how you can structure your reference cabinets. You'll probably also want to add specific views with filters to filter by specific topic by adding a condition where tag has any of or meets exactly specific options that you've pre-specified in the tags field, which is a multiple select field in this case, because oftentimes you'll have multiple tags for the same item and it makes it easier to find, for example, by subject as well as by file type. This could also have the article tag. There we go. We just added that here. Now we can associate it. And now we have two ways to find this item. And if your reference database has hundreds of items at some point, you'll really want to make use of this to not lose anything. Now that you know how to set up all the tables, I hope you've done so in accordance with Samantha here and adjusted it to your needs. We can take a look at clarifying, which admittedly is the least elegant portion of this whole setup. Because in the end, what we'll need to do is move over data from table A to table B, whatever a particular thing may be. I'm going to show you how I found you can do it, but if you find a better way, please let us know in the comments so we can all benefit from that. For now, we can take a look at the clean desk item in the inbox. We need to think about what this is. It looks like a task. So what I'm going to do is actually cut the cell, then go over to tasks. I'm in all tasks. I'm going to add a new row. I'm going to paste the contents. And from here, I can start thinking about what this may be associated with. For now, I'm just going to select the standalone items list. The action state is next action because I can do it right now. And the context is home because that is where Samantha's desk is. Say that she needs to do it before next Monday, meaning the deadline is Sunday, November 27th. There we go. We've fully processed an item. And now you can see under tasks, when we go to the project view and view the standalone items list, that clean desk is also present there. And now to fully clean everything up, we'll need to delete the original record here. And now we're one step closer to inbox 0 in Airtable. Now let's take a look at the Tick Power User course, which Samantha saved. It's a course she'll want to take at some point, but not right now. But how do we move this to a place where it makes sense? It is not an active task, it's not an active project. So instead, she'll want to move it to reference. Now here, we'll need to carefully copy paste things over in a way that makes sense for how we organize reference. The first being name. We move item name to name. We can move URL to source. We can move quote to contents. Now we can add a tag to it. Let's add a new one. Named productivity. It's blue. We can change that by going to Edit Field and making it yellow. And now we've successfully moved another item out of the inbox. And because these are both the same, and just select them both, then press delete on my keyboard. And now the cells are cleared and we have inbox 0. We fully clarified what was in our inbox. And again, I recognize that this is a bit cumbersome. It's a bit of manual work here. But on the other hand, it does force you to do this consciously and make sure that your lists aren't filled to the brim with tasks that perhaps aren't as relevant as you may have thought they were. So there is a silver lining to it, I suppose. And I hope that this will not deter you from using Airtable for GTD, because in the end, this is the weakest link in the chain. But when it comes to engaging, there's actually a super powerful way to have Airtable support your day-to-day activities, which is by going to the tasks view. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is where the action really happens. But we ignored some views we had created here. Now remember, with GTD, it's all about working from context, which we have all predefined. By going to next action, we can see them in a bit more detail. We have 5 next actions right now. Now that's nice, but these are all kinds of contexts bundled together. What if I only want to look at things I can do from home right now? That is where another filter, which you can save in another view, comes in handy. It is, in this case, for example, the home view. Now the filter here is actually twofold. Action state is next action, and context is any of home. And with this combination, we can super easily move back and forth between items with various contexts, so that we can only see what we can do right now based on the context that we're in right now. This is where the magic really happens, in my opinion. What you will notice, as I'm noticing here, is that sometimes these fields, these columns, are positioned differently based on the fact that there's a new view. For example, the mark complete column was moved all the way to the right, which I just fixed, and you may need to fix that for additional views you create as well. But that's just a one-time setup thing. Once you've done that, you can work through your contexts, mark everything complete. Let's say that Samantha cleaned her webcam, so she's ready for some more video sales calls. She also cleaned her desk. But here, we also need to add the filter that says mark complete is open. We just did that, and now everything's cleaned up from the home context. There's nothing else we can do from this context. Now, if you want to reflect on what you've done, there's actually the completed view, which is the only place in this system where the filter is mark complete is actually checked off. And this is helpful for things like your weekly review. If you want to look back on what you've done, here's exactly where you can see that. Not only things you've done yourself, but also things others may have done for you, like the signature on the contract that was a waiting for item when it was checked off. When it comes to pricing, the free version should be enough if you have a smaller setup, which allows you to use one extension, which is the web clipper, up to 1200 records, which may be too little for power users with large second brains, but otherwise, Pro should be enough. All in all, I think Airtable is a pretty usable tool for GTD. I was a bit worried at first that it would be too spreadsheety, so to speak, but with its views, filters, and interfaces, it can be quite powerful. The mobile app, though, it leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to a use case for individual productivity, especially on the go. If you want to get started, give Airtable a spin. You can do so by creating an account with the link in the description. And in the description, you'll also find a link to the template I've used here, which you can duplicate and get started right away, save you some time. And I would also love to hear what are your experiences with Airtable and perhaps suggestions you have for Airtable users. Leave them all in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.